Coming up, the story behind one of the many genius tracks created by one of the most shy and reluctant stars of the rock era. The lyrics of this international hit have spawned very emotional interpretations. See if you can guess what the real answer is about what this song's about. Was this song written about the suicide of a former bandmate? Was it written about saving the whales? Was it written about a bad bout of dysentery? Some swear it's a crusade against abortion. Others are convinced that the song is about a relationship. You can take a guess once you hear the song, and we're going to solve it. It's a song that opened the door for this genius leader of the band to meet his heroes and work with them when they got back together. This band, one of the biggest bands ever, probably the biggest. Let's find out what it is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you lined your bedroom with posters of your favorite bands when you were growing up, you're going to dig what we're doing here on this channel, Stories from the Legends. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the bell so you always know when our latest videos drop. I know you'll like to jump in the time machine with us and get the stories behind your favorite songs. Also, take a look at our Patreon. You know, that's something that we have that helps us to keep it a daily channel, and you can help us curate this history. So between 1974 and 1978, Jeff Lynne, the Leonard Bernstein of rock and roll, was a writing machine. Jeff said he was banging out songs so fast it was like a conveyor belt. Now, one of the songs over that fertile 4-year period was Livin Thing, the lead single from a New World record, the 6th studio album released by Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra.
It's a living thing.
Livin Thing was just that, a piece of music that jumped out of the radio and into the imagination of us as listeners. The lyrics about being on the crest of a wave, rolling and riding and slipping and sliding evoked awe and curiosity. It was like magic.
Riding and slipping and sliding, it's magic.
To unravel the mystery of Livin Thing, let's go back to the origin of ELO and for the construction of the orchestration. When Jeff Lynne formed ELO, he stated that he wanted the band to start where the Beatles had left off with I Am the Walrus. Very cool. The band was founded in 1970 by co-lead singers Jeff Lynne and Roy Wood and the dependable drummer Bev Bevan. They were all carryovers from the dissolution of The Move, the other band they were in. With their integration of rock and classical arrangements, it was essential to bring in accomplished string musicians to complete this orchestra. Steve Woolham was the original violinist to play with ELO, and he performed on their self-titled debut record. But he was never an official member of the band. His work on the track 1053 Overture was the highlight of his short tenure with ELO. Steve actually had a bitter falling out with Roy Wood, which led to Roy firing Steve. And from that point on, Steve's life, it went into a tailspin. He had a romantic relationship with a woman that took all his money and turned to drugs and alcohol. Tragically, Steve plunged to his death. He took his own life in late 1971, shortly before the release of ELO's first album. The next violinist for ELO was Wilf Gibson. He too was a short timer in the group, playing on ELO 2 and on 9 cuts on the group's third LP on the third day. Gibson's pinnacle with ELO was his violin playing on the single Showdown. By 1973, Roy Wood was disgusted with the band's management and left in a huff. He left Jeff Lynne as the undisputed leader of the Electric Light Orchestra. During the making of On the Third Day, Jeff began looking for a new violinist that would be part of the core lineup of ELO. He auditioned many different players, but the one that stood out was Mick Kaminsky. After 2 interviews, Jeff hired Mick right on the spot. According to Jeff, he was the only one that auditioned that didn't hit a sharp note. Mick quickly became an important component for ELO's distinctive sound on their breakout record Face the Music, most notable on the hits Evil Woman and Strange Magic. Initially, Mick mimicked Wilf Gibson's practice of wearing a cape when he played the violin during ELO's live concerts, before he established his own brand of onstage showmanship. Of of course, playing his blue violin. It wasn't Mick who discovered the blue violin, though. Back in the early 70s, ELO had a tour manager named Bernie Boyle. One day during a band rehearsal, Bernie said to Mick, "You got to get an electric violin." Now, at the time, Mick only played an acoustic violin. Like a good tour manager does, Bernie went on a quest to find this instrument. So Bernie went to several music stores looking for an electric violin, but he found the choices to be slim pickings. Nearly all the stores had violins, but they didn't carry electric ones, except for one. The only instrument they had in stock was a blue one. Bernie paid for it and he brought it back to Mick. What appeared to be a last resort became Mick Kaminsky's trademark, performing with a blue electric violin from there. Mick is a classically trained and extremely talented violinist. He could have chosen a different path for his career, electing to wear a snooty black tie as a member of a symphony. But instead, he went the sweaty, vigorous rock and roll route, biding his time for just the right opportunity to come his way by taking odd jobs like he was sweeping floors, making sandwiches, and working as a dealer at a casino. To name a few of his jobs. Now, when it came time to record songs for a new world record in the summer of '76, Jeff Lynne was in the middle of the hot writing cycle that I mentioned earlier in this episode. He had a long list of strong candidates to include on this album, in addition to Livin Thing, Rock Aria, Telephone Line, and a reworking of Do Ya, which was originally recorded by The Move, with Roy Wood taking lead vocal and a heavy dose of cowbell. The orchestra on Livin Thing conducted around Jeff Lynne's lead vocal and lead guitar, and it also features Bev Bevan on drums, Richard Tandy on keyboards, Hugh McDowell and Melvin Gell on cello, Kelly Grucut on bass, and of course Mick Kaminsky on violin. Mick kicks off Livin Thing with a stirring violin arrangement. He dazzles again with a violin solo in the song's bridge, just breathtaking. Mick's violin intro is followed by a mock Spanish orchestral vignette that swells into a surging symphonic ELO rocker. Now, since this release is the first single from a New World record in October of '76, Livin Thing has been passionately embraced by fans with a variety of interpretations as to the song's meaning, like I said at the beginning. It's a living thing, it's a terrible thing to lose.
It's a terrible thing to lose.
That line in the chorus sparked the idea that Jeff Lynne was thinking about his ex-bandmate Steve Woolham, taking his own life, when he came up with the lyric. And he wrote a song to lift the spirits of those in misery. The conjecture from that school of thought was that Livin Thing is life.
Don't you do it, don't you do it.
As beautiful and as uplifting as that theory is, Jeff Lynne was not inspired by Steve Woolham's suicide, or even someone else's demise. Another widespread theory was that Livin Thing was an anti-abortion song. That opinion was shared by some pro-life organizations, contending that the Livin Thing is referring to an unborn baby. But Jeff Lynne put the kibosh on that theory. It was not written about that. Okay, so there's two. As we continue to try to solve this, I do want to thank our sponsor really quick, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear on here. Zenni is amazing because you can design your own pair of glasses, what looks great on you, and you can do a virtual try-on at their website before you purchase. You can add other amazing features for up to 80% off regular retail prices. Just click on the link in our info button right up here or below where you can get our best deal.
Higher and higher, baby.
Popular Australian singer Christine Anu remade Livin Thing, and her version was used in a 3-year advertising run by the New South Wales Environment Protection Authority. This was for their campaign to help raise concerns about protecting the environment against waste and air pollution. Along those lines, there were groups of people that, for some reason, thought the song was about saving the whales. Undoubtedly, Jeff Lynne wanted the great mammals of the sea to thrive, but he didn't write Livin Thing about saving them from endangerment. So that's out. It may be a little disappointing to some, but Jeff Lynne, he had no social or political agenda when he wrote Livin Thing. In fact, when he first wrote the song, he hated it. When Jeff first wrote the lyrics and recorded them with vocals, he came back to the studio the very next day, and when he listened to the playback, he thought, that's terrible. So Jeff instructed recording engineer Reinhold Mack to erase everything. Everything. All the lead vocals, the backing harmonies, everything. He completely rewrote the song in the studio from there. Jeff recounted that he amended the song in about 30 minutes. And when he was finished, Livin Thing became a different thing altogether. He was writing so fast he disclosed that he didn't really have time to think about a concept. And he reverted to the tried and true subject of love. What did Jeff have in mind when he was writing Livin Thing? Well, actually, Jeff told Hi-Fi News and Record Review in 2014 that the original inspiration for Livin Thing was a bout of food poisoning he suffered through when he was on holiday in Spain. He said in that same interview, and I quote him exactly, "You'll never be able to listen to it the same way again." I wouldn't want anyone to think it's about a bad paella on a Spanish holiday. Actually, when he did the redux of the song, he thankfully wrote the song about a loss of love instead of dysentery. So here's the deal. If you guessed it was about a relationship or it was about dysentery, you're actually both right, because it kind of was about both. But it makes total sense it was about love when you hear that big, joyful chorus. Love is a living thing. When you're fortunate enough to find love, it needs to be nurtured and protected, because if you don't, you will lose it. And love, as Jeff Lynne asserted, is a terrible thing to lose.
It's a terrible thing to lose.
One of the most memorable parts of Livin Thing is the euphoric higher and higher baby pre-chorus. Oh, I love it.
Higher and higher, baby.
Although uncredited, the singers that delivered the soulful support vocals around the pre-chorus were Bree Brandt, Addie Lee, and Patty Quattro. They were from the all-female group Fanny. Over their 6 years of existence, Fanny had 2 top 40 hits. Charity Ball, that peaked at number 40 in the Billboard Hot 100, happened in 71, and Butterboy, that climbed to number 29 in 75. Now, if the name Patty Quattro sounds familiar, that's because Patty is the sister of Susie Quattro. Besides being siblings, Patty and Susie were bandmates in the groundbreaking act The Pleasure Seekers. So in the pre-chorus and chorus of Livin Thing, we hear the exuberant Jeff Lynne falsetto. Ah, love it. Now, Jeff has confided that his mother didn't like his falsetto. She often criticized him for singing in falsetto, although he loved his mom, whose parents actually were entertainers. Jeff disregarded her parental advice, and he made his falsetto a hallmark of the ELO sonic experience, and we're all grateful for it.
You shine a light on my life and let me see.
The post-chorus of Livin Thing made listeners pause. What the hell does Jeff Lynne mean when he yells out, "I'm taking a dive," with heavy reverb and helplessness as if he's drowning? Now, Jeff's explanation of the expression "taking a dive," it's been murky, but there is perhaps clarity in verse 3 when Lynne sings about floating downstream before the backup singers chime in with "I'm taking a dive," followed by the next line, "Don't start spoiling the show." Taking a dive could be about ELO's rise to fame and how crazy life gets with rock and roll stardom, especially when you're trying to keep a relationship alive while facing temptations on the road.
'Cause you can't hold the sled floating downstream.
Livin Thing bolted strong out of the gate. It became a huge international hit. The single busted the top 10 all over Europe. It went to number 4 in the UK. It went to number 3 in Austria. The single levitated all the way to number 2 in Australia, and it went to number 1 in South Africa. Now in the US, the song stalled at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. Once again, the legacy of this song in America, much larger than its peak chart position. The success of Livin Thing was a bit sweeter than other hit ELO singles for Jeff Lynne, because when the song first began to get airplay, he was visiting his parents during a short holiday, and it seemed that every morning when he woke up, Livin Thing was being played on the radio. It's really cool to hear him explain that Jeff fondly remembers listening to the song on the radio with his dad on those mornings. It's a very special memory that leaps to mind every time he thinks of the song.
Don't you do it, don't you do it.
As I've told stories of my own dad, I can understand. Livin Thing was also a little more satisfying than other ELO hits because Jeff strategically structured the song with augmented chords. This helped to give the song a unique sound and separated it from everything else that was on the radio.
It's a living thing.
An augmented chord is 2 stacks of major thirds with the last note raised a half step. George Harrison was also a big fan of augmented chords, another artistic flair that Guitar George shared with Jeff Lynne, leading their collaboration on George's solo material in the 80s, and the assembly of the supergroup The Traveling Wilburys. It's pretty cool that that's where it all kind of started.
You can sit around and wait for the phone to ring.
ELO's Livin Thing was used for the promo of the TV show Desperate Housewives in the summer of 2004, also in 2017 for the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. The song was also placed in the film Cruella 2021 and in Paul Thomas Anderson's movie Boogie Nights in 97. Kind of a funny one here. The soundtrack for Boogie Nights, being a period piece for the late 70s and early 80s, featured many carefully placed song clips that really set up the time period on the scene. Paul Thomas, or PT as he's called in Hollywood, he revealed that Jeff Lynne was the only songwriter that insisted on seeing the film before giving his permission to use Livin Thing, because of the film's risque subject matter. Actually, Jeff Lynne initially refused the licensing of the song to this movie, but after seeing it and how the song was used in a private screening, get this, Jeff Lynne leaped out of his seat with his fist raised and enthusiastically green-lighted the song for the movie right then and there. Among several covers of Livin Thing is a very interesting interpretation by the Beautiful South. Great band. They released their version of the single in 2004 and it reached number 24 on the British Singles Chart.
And your sweet desire.
Actually, the song recharted again in 2017, ELO's version. This was after it was included in a popular commercial. That's the thing about ELO. Their music is, and always will be, timeless. It'll happen again and again. Now, we've released several episodes about Jeff Lynne and ELO at Professor of Rock. Never ceases to amaze me how well their music has stood the test of time, like I said. The musicianship and the genius of their visionary orchestration, it's incredible. Continuing to captivate and connect with new generations of fans. Can't say enough about them. ELO, they were sometimes disparaged by music critics who labeled them as being too Beatles-esque. But that stigma never bothered Jeff Lynne or his bandmates. They were happy to take up where the Beatles left off. I mean, it was their plan all along. The Fab Four, they didn't mind either. John Lennon referred to ELO as sons of the Beatles. Love that. The comparisons between the Beatles and ELO came full circle when the maestro of ELO, Jeff Lynne himself, produced the recording of Free as a Bird for the Beatles anthology. It was George Harrison's idea to hire Jeff to produce the song, and this included the conversion of vocal outtakes by John Lennon onto a track with new instrumental parts played by Paul, George, and Ringo, much like their new single that just came out. Even though John had passed, he was generously reunited with bandmates as if he were actually with them in the studio. Jeff Lynne did a phenomenal job.
Long time ago when we was fab.
The remaining 3 members of the Beatles, they also loved the results. They were in awe of the way the track sounded and praised Jeff Lynne's attention to detail. We're going to do a piece on Free as a Bird very soon. I grew up on ELO, as I've said in the past. My dad, ever the Beatles fan, felt that ELO carried the torch or the mantle for the Fab Four after they broke up. Whenever I hear this song, Livin Thing, I think of my dad singing the falsetto with his enchanting humor, pretending like he was holding the microphone, singing into his fist, and then extending the mic to me to join in as we drove around in his Ford pickup. Now that my dad's gone, this song, it just brings back his memories so perfectly. And those were the days. From one of the best bands of the 70s, beloved by everyone. Another legend, the great Casey Kasem, one of my heroes. He called ELO the world's first touring rock and roll chamber group. This is while introducing Livin Thing on his American Top 40 Countdown. And I'm proud to chime in with my own accolade for ELO. I'm going to call him the world's first orchestral pop sensation, conducted by the master himself, Mr. Jeff Lynne. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about the one and only Electric Light Orchestra. What are your memories of this song? What do you think about Jeff Lynne, about ELO, about his time as a producer? Let's have a great discussion about him. If you like our videos, we do invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.